No. One of the things we talk about, Brianna, is why we live in London. You want to tell them one of the reasons why we live here?
Because it's safe here.
Why is it safer here than in the US?
Because the police officers don't always carry guns.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? Eric Moser here with Covert Conversations. Thanks for joining me. In today's video, we're going to be going over a recent video or a recent discussion on CNN where a father wrote a long letter to his son explaining to him his concerns over his son's safety in regards to the police treatment of blacks, where he ultimately ended up moving his family to England because of his concern for the police. So we're going to jump right into this video. But before we do, if you appreciate content that helps you better understand police use of force and all things related to policing in general, especially in this current climate, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button and that notification bell so you never miss out on any of my future content. I'm going to post the link to the letter that the father wrote. It's a little lengthy, but I want you to have access to it. But we're going to watch the recent CNN interview that the family did, and I'll comment here and there.
Your father is talking about some pretty serious stuff here that affects everybody. Yes. And I wonder, what do you think of what he has to say? How does it make you feel?
They're talking to a 6-year-old kid, so.
Happy?
I honestly think he doesn't even fully understand everything. I could be wrong. Some young kids are very intelligent, but I honestly think he doesn't fully understand and comprehend the everything involved in this whole George Floyd incident, because he wrote this letter on the anniversary of George Floyd's death.
Happy?
Happy, yes.
Why?
Why?
Because
I can tell you it would make me happy because it would tell me that my father loves me a whole ton and will do everything he can to protect me and make me safe now.
If you're even remotely familiar with my channel, you understand that we try to get to the details and to the facts of these police shootings. And I call bad shootings out when they happen, unashamedly. My mindset is that we need to be fair and balanced when it comes to understanding a police use of force. And at the same time, I see it's so obvious to me that there is a clear media bias, a clear push to promote a specific left-wing ideology that is very anti-police. And unfortunately, the dad has drank the Kool-Aid.
And for the rest of my life. And it's got to be a great feeling having his arm on your shoulder right now, as I know it's a great feeling to be holding those Power Rangers.
I think that's really, Keith, sorry.
No. One of the things we talk about, Brianna, is why we live in London. You want to tell them one of the reasons why we live here?
Because it's safe here.
Why is it safer here than in the US?
Because the police officers don't always carry guns.
Lord have mercy. Now, let's not even ignore the reality of living in London, living in England in general, where the heightened crime rate and the massive amount of knife attacks that take place. Hey, real quick, folks, I just wanted to add a bit of an addendum to this video. I've been going through the data and going through a few articles that talk about the crime rate in London compared to New York City. So you're talking about a population, 2 different countries, clearly, that have approximately the same amount of people, both over 8 million, close to 9 million people. But there being a dramatically different approach when it comes to guns and things like that. Of course, we know we have the Second Amendment here in the United States where guns are at a premium. And as a result of that, we have a higher rate of gun-related crime. But at the same time, in England, it's near impossible, or it's extremely difficult to purchase a firearm as a citizen. But in 2018, now the numbers fluctuate, they vary from year to year. And I've also noticed a tremendous amount of response to articles like this that reference the crime rate, the homicide rate in places like England and other places where guns aren't as readily available as they are in the United States. But I found this article to be quite interesting, and I figured it would be worth a share, especially in relation to the fact that here we have this individual who uprooted his family, moved his family to England, but yet in 2018 and also in other studies, you'll see a similar number in various years, but yet you see a comparable murder rate. London murder rate now tops New York City's. When British police launched a murder investigation Tuesday in the shooting death of a 17-year-old girl, it pushed the homicide rate in Britain's capital to a new troubling milestone. London's murder rate surpassed New York City's for the first time. London tallied 15 murders in February and 22 in March, slightly more than New York City for the same 2 months, which logged 14 in February and 21 in March, according to murder rate statistics provided to USA Today by London's Metropolitan Police and New York Police Department. Now, we are talking about a small block in time. We're talking about a few months. However, like I said, I just want to reiterate the importance of understanding these numbers. I get Google alerts every day. One of the ways I have it set up is I get a lot of news talking about knife assaults, knife attacks, things like that. And I would dare say the vast majority of those news stories come from England. So for this guy to uproot his family because he's worried about the rare occasion, the rare occurrence of a police officer shooting a kid playing with a gun, extremely rare occasion, extremely rare occurrences, with the heightened amount of homicides, is just a clear demonstration of the irrational thinking that I like to point out. Let me read this real quick. In London, the homicide rate has increased as the British capital experienced a rise in knife-related crime, responsible for 31 deaths this year, while New York City's murder rate has steadily dropped for almost 3 decades. Of the 54 murders in New York City this year, 32 people died by firearm. So I just want to share a little bit of that information to you. Again, this article is dated to 2018, but there has been a consistent issue in England, in the UK, with knife attacks. That has been a consistent problem. Because people want to assume that once you remove the guns from the equation, that murder will drop. Now, it may make it more difficult because you have to be right upon someone in order to kill them. But as long as we continue to not deal with the issue of the heart, the mind, the will of the individual, the sin nature, you will continually struggle. And this will be the case because there are many times I've seen reports in England where they've had news broadcasters, politicians talking about putting new laws in place to limit the accessibility of knives. Again, they continue to ignore the main problem. So I just wanted to share that video, and especially in the context of the rest of this video, I hope that helps. It really frustrates me when we have these discussions about a police use of force where people don't even attempt, many people, not everyone, but many people don't even attempt to examine the details of these contacts with the police. All the numbers, and I've been through the numbers over and over again. And I'll share a few links above to point you to some of my content, how so many people believe one thing about the police and how they treat blacks in general, overall, but the data clearly shows something else. With the hundreds of millions of contacts that the police have with the public every single year, nearly 400 million, and the very, very small number of potentially innocent people that are shot by the police, potentially, if we're speaking about unarmed shootings. And once again, unarmed does not mean that you are not potentially dangerous or you cannot be a threat to someone's life. Let's make that abundantly clear. But it really breaks my heart that these people are going to live their lives living in fear to the point to where you uproot your family and bring them to a different country because you believe a lie. You believe a lie. There is no epidemic of police killings of blacks. There is no epidemic. Do your own research. Look at the number of shootings of unarmed black men or black men in general that came in contact with the police who were shot by them and what they were doing when the shootings took place. And you'll see the vast majority of them being in possession of a weapon. You'll see the vast majority of them fighting or fleeing. You'll see that consistently. And these aren't biased, police-related or conservative-leaning newspapers or websites. This is data and this is information from places like the Washington Post. They were the ones who demonstrated that 85 to 90% of all people shot by the police were in possession of a weapon. They said that. That's not me. That's not the FBI Uniform Crime Report. But yet you consistently hear people buying into the lies, consistently. But let's proceed.
So that's one of the number one reasons why I live here, is that he can be a little boy, walk in the park as a Power Ranger or with a toy gun, and I not have to fear that someone would easily shoot him or mistaking him.
Now, let me ask this question. How often does that happen? As tragic and as horrific as the Tamir Rice incident was, and it was, absolutely, how often does that happen? And I'm not saying that a parent shouldn't be concerned about their kid going out in public with a fake gun or a toy gun and ending up getting shot or something bad happening to them. But if a father or mom is present, that can minimize the potential risks. But if it's safer for your kid to be at a park and not have a weapon that looks like a real gun in his hand, then make sure you have something that's fluorescent orange or green or blue or something like that that doesn't look like a real gun. Picking up and moving your whole family behind that, it's just silly. But people have been convinced that this happens on a daily basis. Innocent people are gunned down. I'll link some articles above that demonstrate that what people believe and what they perceive and the reality of what happens with blacks interacting with the police are grossly different, are dramatically different. And typically people who lean left, the further left you lean, the higher the number you think, the more likely you are to think that the police are gunning down hundreds or thousands of unarmed, innocent black men every year. But just hearing them say that is really just sad, honestly.
Have a real gun. And so it's the number one reason why we're here in the United Kingdom, though certainly there are challenges here, but I feel safer for him on the streets and at play here in the UK.
Keith, that is just sort of a sad commentary on the realities of what happens in America.
Of course she's going to say that. I mean, she's pushed this narrative for years. So I'm not surprised hearing her say that. I would love to hear them support that with the data. I know that there's some data out there that tries to make these claims and make these arguments, but when you look at these cold, hard numbers, that argument falls apart dramatically, quickly. And it's so disappointing on this level as well. There are so many more things that are killing us as black folks in this country. I mean, numbers that dwarf any police shooting, especially for the so-called innocent victim of a police shooting. The number of black homicides of blacks that take place on a yearly basis, completely dwarfs the number of police shootings. But he was okay keeping his kid in the United States while all that was going on. But the minuscule, yep, I said it, minuscule number of police shootings that take place. Oh, you're going to pick your kids up and you're going to take them out of country. Nonsense, man. Nonsense. You are not being logically consistent, sir. Not at all.
I think that a lot of people read what you wrote, and the way that you described, like John was speaking to, the way you described Zayden and your hopes for him are what, you would think any parent feels for their child. It really resonates. What does that say to you that this is a choice you've made where that is a safer place for your son?
It is a bit disheartening because, of course, I'm American to the core. I love everything about America. But there's this 400-year history of the dehumanization of Black and brown bodies,
which has radically improved over those years. Be consistent. Be consistent. The opportunities that we have today as compared to 50, even 60 years ago and beyond are dramatically different. Sir, we are not living in the same America. From one point where blacks were bought and sold, to where we had Jim Crow laws in place telling us where we could go and where we couldn't go, to now where those things are illegal, and that we can have a voice and we can speak out on these different things, and we can enact change, and we can motivate change within our culture. He's feeding his kid, unfortunately, he's feeding his kid a bunch of crap.
And I know that we have this urgency to fix this issue and police reform and all these things, and they are important and it needs to happen. But it's not going to happen in a way that I would feel secure and safe with him by the time he's of age to drive a car. I don't want to have the same kind of talk with him that my parents had with me. Certainly I'll have a talk, but I want him to have something that is more normal, something more global.
So the idea of telling you not to run from the police, not to shift and move your hands quickly and reach for stuff and potentially reach for things without letting the officer know that's a bad thing. Once again, these people only consider things from their perspective. They don't understand how over 4,000 officers are attacked on an annual basis during a car stop. They don't understand the increasing number of police officers that are gunned down on a yearly basis. They don't acknowledge the fact that nearly 60,000 officers are attacked on a yearly basis, anywhere from a punch all the way to being shot at, and how that number only seems to be growing in recent years. None of that is even considered. None of that is even thought of.
You know, with our urgency to do legislation and to change things, I think there are a couple of things we missed. Number one, with the Civil Rights Act, we missed the implementation plan that the United States Supreme Court struck down. So we can do police reform, but is there an implementation plan? What does that plan look like? How long will it take to go into effect? I want him to be safe during the process. And so we've chosen to live here.
Let me back that up, because I was trying to read his resume. Theologian and social justice scholar. That should kind of tell you what you need to know.
Do police reform, but is there an implementation plan? What does that plan look like? How long will it take to go into effect? I want him to be safe during that process. And so we've chosen to live here.
Like I said before, if you teach your kids a few basic and common sense concepts, so when they come in contact with the police, like the millions of people do every day here in this country, then they'll be fine. They'll be totally fine. I'm just really sick of the woke narrative, y'all. I truly am. I'm truly sick of the woke narrative and all the people that blindly assume it to be true. Very frustrating. But what do y'all think about this video? What do you think about the dad overall? Do you think his heart's in the right place? It very well may be, but I think he's extremely misguided, and he's causing his child more harm than good. But I'd like to know what y'all think overall. And I'll link a video right here that kind of goes into a little more detail as to my concerns when it comes to this entire social justice issue and policing in general. But in the meantime, stay safe, God bless, and make sure you join the conversation.